So we're back with lesson 5, part 2. We've made some customizations to our products index. Just a couple of things I want to touch on just before we resume this. I did get some really good feedback. Thank you for those of you who took the time to give me some feedback on how the course is going, if you have any suggestions for me. I know a couple people somebody mentioned if I could just code a little bit slower, or they said sometimes they need a little bit more explanation. I'll try to be mindful of that. But by all means, just as Yulia did, for example, before we took the break, if you just need me to pull the code back up for another minute because you got a bit behind, just let me know and I can do that. So if you're a bit behind and you need to see something or you need a little more explanation on something you didn't quite get, just try to let me know through the chat and I'll do my best to accommodate. Obviously, I can't, with 30 people in the class, can't always get to everything or debug every issue everyone has in class, but I'll do my best. I also know a common issue that came up that people are really concerned about co-op jobs, which is understandable. Ross and I have kind of a discussion tabled about that, so stay tuned for maybe some more. I'd like to follow up with people on that issue, but Ross and I need to have a little bit of a chat. So that's maybe something we can address over the next week or two in class, once I chat a bit more with Ross. So we said before the break, we downloaded some images that I had provided of the food in our store. We also downloaded this little placeholder image. So now we want to modify our photo input here when we're adding a new product. We don't want this to be a text box that we type in. This just needs to be a file upload. So we're going to modify the products create view. So let's go ahead and do that. So under views and products, we've got our create view. So let's open up that file and let's make a few changes here. First thing is we may want to change the page titles. Just says create, and then we've got an H1 that says create and an H4 that says product. So it looks like this. So let's change these, and then we're going to reconfigure this photo input to allow for file uploads. So first I'm going to change this to say, rather than create a product, we'll say add a product. And I'm going to change my heading on line 7 to also say add a product. Then we can get rid of this kind of silly H4 tag down on line 9. Okay. So now we'll need to make a few changes within the form. In our form tag on line 12, we're going to need to add an attribute to allow it to process file upload. So we're going to add the encoding type. You would have probably worked with this attribute in your PHP class because we did file uploads. Typically, we do include file uploads in the course content for the PHP class. So we know that no HTML form can actually transfer a file without this encoding type. This converts the file to binary code so we can transport, we can copy it from our client's computer, we can generate a copy on the web server. So make sure you add this encoding type equals multipart / form - data, and that's right on line 12 inside the existing form tag. So again, we're not locked in to the HTML that gets scaffolded. It's just a starting point, and we can make whatever changes we need to in order to build our applications the way we want to. So we're going to add the encoding type. Then I'm going to scroll down here to line 35, where I have this input ASP4 ASP photo. So right now, this gets generated as a text box. Text box is useless here. We don't want users to type something in. We want to allow them to pick a photo. So what change, we need to add something on line 35 that will change this from a text box to a file upload box. What change should we make on line 35? We're going to keep everything that's here, but we want to add something to this. Yep. Very good, Alex and Amanda. We're going to add a type attribute. So we're going to set the type to file. So we're changing the HTML input type from the default, which is a single line text input. We're changing it to a file upload. So add this highlighted code into your photo input. Okay, so you can see the code on line 35. It's marked in green. And now I get this little browse message that says no file selected. And when I click it, I could now go and choose one of our food photos, which is cool. Okay, so this was the easy part, setting up the form so that it can accept file uploads and our input type gets changed from a text box to a file upload. So that's kind of the view change we need to make. Where are we going to need to write the code to actually check for a file upload and process it? Yes, Yulia, we will. Let's get it working in the create first, and then if we have time, Yulia, yes, absolutely. That's exactly, we're going to need to do it on the edit. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's great. You're thinking ahead. Don't be sorry. All suggestions are welcome. So I'm glad you're thinking about this. You know, how do we make this better? That's excellent. Don't be sorry. Give yourself a pat on the back. And Attila, that's right. Absolutely. So now we need to go to the controller and we need to modify the logic in our create method so that when we're creating a product, we can also check if a file got uploaded, we also want to process it. So let's go to our products controller. And you'll see here, there's two versions of the get method, of the create method. There's a get that starts on line 48. And then there's a post that starts on line 55. So what's the difference? How come there are two versions of the method and both are called create? What's the difference between these two methods? Good guess, but actually they're both for creating. Okay, Eureka, right. So the post is for when the user submits. And what's the get method? What happens on the get method? It goes through the URL and post. Yeah, so get sets up the view. So the get method runs when we click the link, when we click our create new link, this is our get method, right? It displays the form. So when the page loads here, it's running a get method. It's giving us an empty form. How would we trigger the post method? So clicking the link, this runs the get version of create. What would trigger the post version of this method? I think Eureka mentioned it already. Right, we would submit the form and that would then, yeah, that's right. Clicking the button, that would actually then post the form and run this version. So you can see that's why we've got, so the default method is get. So if it doesn't specify the method type, it always runs get. So whenever we've got a form being submitted, it has this HTTP post annotation above the method name. So we can see it's overloaded. The get takes no parameters. It just queries the list of categories and loads the view. The post method is much more complex. So we're declaring its post. It also includes this little validate anti-forgery token, and there's a link here explaining what this does. And this is here by default. So any idea what this validate anti-forgery token might do based on the name? This little code hint kind of describes it. Has to do with security. Yep, it's preventing a type of attack. This prevents a cross-site scripting attack. So this validate anti-forgery token, the web server generates a token on our domain, and it ensures whenever someone submits the form, that form submission is coming from our same domain. So there's a link here right in it puts it right in the comments if you want to read more about how these anti-forgery tokens work. So it's a hidden security measure that's built into our scaffolded forms. So let's look at what happens in the post method, because we're going to need to modify it a bit because there's nothing in here about processing a file upload. So this code runs asynchronously. The method is create, and it's got this bind keyword with a list. What do you suppose this code that I'm highlighting in blue, what would it be doing? Bind, and then we've got a list of the properties of a product. Okay, so what it's doing is connecting the input fields from the form. So we've got fields for name, price, weight, category ID, and photo. Yep. It's first, even before it validates them, it connects each input to the model property of the same name. So the product name input gets mapped to the product name property. So it binds the inputs to the properties with the same name, and then it's also creating a new product object here with these values. So it's basically populating a new product. So bind instantiates, populates properties of a new product object we want to save. So that's what this bind is doing here. Scott, the validation is here. And then it checks the state of our model. So have any of the values, do all the values fit the rules of the product model? If they do, we're going to add the new object. And then what's happening on line 66? What would this code be doing? Save changes async. So if all our values are okay, yeah, exactly, Minjin. This actually creates the new record in the database. So our insert, instead of us creating an SQL insert we just we add the object and then we call save changes. So that will commit that new product to our database. And then we just are returning to the index. We're going back to the list. We have two other lines of code here. If our model state is not valid, we then need to refill the category and reload the product view. So if I do something like this, I just fill it out, right? In this case, my model isn't valid. So I stay on this form. Keeps me here until it's valid. So this is all the auto-generated code that we already know it works because we've already added a bunch of products. So we need to modify this a bit. Where in this code, where in this workflow should we check for a photo upload and upload the photo? Because we want to add this feature to this method. So where in here does it make sense for us to add some code to check for the photo and upload it? Yep. Okay, right. I think that's right. So, yep, Julia, in the if statement, and then should it go before or after this existing code? Yeah, we want to do it before. Absolutely. So in here, we are going to check for photo upload and save file, if any. So this should happen before we save to the database. So we need to make a few changes here. We need to make some additions. The first thing we want is we need a new parameter at the end of this method. So right now there's one, it's binding all the properties to a product. We also need a parameter of type iFormFile, and I'm going to move the photo attribute out of this list. We're not binding the photo automatically. So I'm going to remove photo from the field list, and that's going to be a separate property of type iFormFile. So if they don't choose a photo, it should just be null. Now, iFormFile is not recognized, so we'll need to add a reference to Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.HTTP in order to use this form file class. So I'll add the reference. My error goes away.
Hello.
Hi. Is there a question? So now we can check if this photo property, this iFormFile, we can check if there is a photo. So we'll say if photo does not equal null, so now our file upload code has to run here. We're going to get temp location of uploaded photo. So I'll create a variable called file path. So we're going to get the temporary file name. Again, we're going to be required to add a reference to the system.io library, IO meaning input output. So if we're going to work with the file system at all, we're going to need this system.io reference. We want to create a unique name so we don't overwrite any existing photos. So Microsoft has a class for this that will generate a globally unique identifier. That class is called a GUID. So this will initialize a new instance of the GUID. So this will create some random string of letters and numbers that Microsoft's algorithm is telling us will be unique. So we're going to prefix our file name So for example, photo.jpg will become something like A1, B2, C3. So it's going to add some kind of random prefix on the beginning. This will help ensure that our file names are unique and we don't overwrite a photo we already got. GUID class. GUID stands for a globally unique identifier. It's a built-in MS class. Okay, so I'm making lots of comments here because we're doing a whole bunch of new stuff. Did you work with the GUID class in your C# class, or is this new? Okay. Okay, Scott, why did we capitalize it? Excellent question. We capitalized it because, first of all, in our model, right, we're referencing the photo property. We're also referencing the input box, right? Our input type equals file is called photo. So we're referencing this input in the form, and it's with a capital P. So this photo attribute represents that file upload input. That's I-form file. So now we need to set destination path. So we need to set up where we are going to save this file. We've got the name of the file. We've given it a unique name. So we now need a place to store any files that get uploaded. We don't currently have a good place. So where should our images go? We've got a CSS, a JS, and a lib inside of www root. But I'm going to make two folders here, a folder and then a subfolder. So in my Solution Explorer, I'm going to right-click www root, and I'm going to add a new folder inside. And I'm going to call that folder img. So this will be for any images. Now I'm going to put a new folder inside of here because the general img folder should be for things like the site logo. I want to keep the file uploads that our users do in a separate place inside. So in here, I'm going to now put a new folder inside the www root img. So I'm going to right click, and again, I'm going to add a new folder, and I'll call this maybe products. So I want, when we're adding a photo to a product, it's going to go in here. So I've had to make the IMG folder and the products folder. So now we want to set this folder as the destination. This is where we want to save those product images. So I'm going to create an upload path variable. So I'm going to get the current directory. I don't want to hard code the path because the file path will be different when I'm running it locally and when I publish this to Azure. So we're going to get our current directory, and then we're going to append on the www root img, and I have to escape these with double slashes, products. So we're going to save to this folder we just built, and then we'll append on our unique file name. Yes, you're right. So this is dynamic. On my own computer, it's in C, users, R, Freeman, source. But if I publish to Azure, it's going to be in a totally different path. So this gets the file path right back to the root drive dynamically. And we need the double slashes here to escape the characters. I'll show you why. If I take out the double slashes, you'll notice it now fails to compile. It says unrecognized escape sequence. So all of those slashes in the file path, they all need to be doubles. So now we actually want to execute. This is all the setup. No Manjinder, because we're working with the file system, it won't work with the relative path because we're using the IO library and the file system. So relative paths aren't going to work in this case. Yes, Amar, that's right. Get current directory. That tells you what folder are we currently in on the operating system. Excellent questions. So we're going to use a file stream. We're going to create a new file stream in our upload path. Yep, you can use this in your project, absolutely. And we are going to be in file mode create. So we're going to use a file stream, and we just have to run this asynchronously. So we call photo, and we use the copy to async method to our stream. So this is what actually saves a copy of that image into the IMG products folder. So until line 84 runs, nothing actually really happens. We're just getting the file from the server cache. We're giving it a unique name. We're setting up where in the operating system the file should be copied to. And then we use a new stream to copy the file into that path. So after line 84, the file should actually get generated over here in our www root img products. We have to do one last thing, which is set the photo property name of the new product object. So before we save to the database, so if we upload photo.jpg, if we rename it to ABC123 photo, on line 84, we save the file. We now need to include this name in the database. When we're saving to the database, we need to link this record to the corresponding photo. So we'll set our photo attribute equal to our file name. Okay, I'll put all this up on GitHub right now. I know that's a lot of code and it's a fair bit of new stuff. So it can be easy to miss something. I'll put this up on GitHub right now and we'll try it. We may have to adjust it a little bit, but I think it looks pretty good.
Professor, can I ask a question? I don't know if you will cover it, but I was just thinking, if I have, for example, multiple products, they're going to use the same picture. Is there a way of dealing with that? For example, you have strawberries, you want to have two entries with different weights, and you want to use the same image. Is there a way without uploading two photos?
That's a really good question. I would recommend you still use the same photo because then you have the flexibility to change it for one product, but not the other. So there's not a simple way to do it, and it's not very scalable. It's not wrong what you're suggesting, but my recommendation would be include, even if you included the same photo twice. For me, that's probably a better way to manage it. So Yulia, what we're going to do, that's what this little placeholder image was for. We don't need to upload it to each one, but we can write some logic on this page where we try to display the photo, but if it's null, we can display the placeholder instead. So let's try this out. I've pushed the code to GitHub. And Yulia, it wouldn't be wrong if you wanted to actually save the default name of the placeholder. You could. We don't really need to. We can just add some logic in the view, but it certainly wouldn't be wrong. So I'm going to try and create a product. So I have avocado, 300 grams. It's produce. So now I'm going to click Browse and go to my avocado photo, and let's see what happens. Well, try to upload. Okay, well, that's encouraging. It added it to our list. You can see what this GUID looks like. And now we can go and look, did this image actually get copied to our www image product? So if I go back here, and now we can see there's something in the products folder, and there's the image. So our upload seems to be working. Yulia, when you say your link is not displaying, I'm not sure what you mean. Oh yes, it's not showing up yet. That's right, Alex. We don't want to show this, right? This is useless. We're going to need to, yeah, that's fine. We'll have to, again, do this manually, right? It's not smart enough to know this should be an image it should render. Just treats it like a string, because this is just a string property in the database. So that's okay. I'm going to add one or two more, and then we'll deal with this. So I've got oysters. for, I don't know, 1,000 grams. Category was seafood. And I will choose my oysters. So now again, I get a different global identifier. Yep, the code is also, I've pushed it to GitHub, so you can also reference it there. So we added the iForm file property, got the original file, created a unique name as a string, set the upload path, and then used our file stream to copy the file. And then lastly, we're setting the photo attribute equal to our new file. So this code is also on GitHub, if that's easier. So the next step we'll want to do, as Alex suggested, is we'll need to modify the products index. So instead of printing out the name of the file, we're going to use that string as the source of an image tag. So I'm going to go back to, it could be Scott. Potentially it might cause a problem if you're not on Windows. I have seen it before. So I'm going to go back to the index method, and I want to change line 48 where it just prints out the name. I'm going to delete what's there, and we'll write a little logic in the view. We'll say if our model.photo, whoops, sorry, it's our item.photo does not equal null. We want to display, thanks Manjinder. We can even simplify it a little bit. So it's going to be inside our images folder, products. We can just use @item.photo. There you go. Put in an alt tag for accessibility. It says product photo. And Manjinder, if you wanted to use it that way, the way you've done is totally fine as well. So let's see what I get now. So I've modified that second last TD tag with a little bit of logic. We're going to check if the item has a photo. And if it does, we're going to render an image tag and use the photo property as the source of our image. And also make sure, Manjinder, it's not only the IMG folder, but it's inside of products, right? So they're in here. Okay, so now we get this. Working, it's a little big. Maybe we want to scale this down a bit. So I think we can use a bootstrap class for this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to add a class. Bootstrap has a IMG thumbnail class. So let's apply that. That's still way too big, I think. Or am I just cached? Let's see. Okay, too big. I'm going to create my own class to scale this down. So again, we can customize anything. Let me change my class. I'll just change my class here to thumb. And then I'm going to define a thumb class in our own style sheet. I'm going to change that class to be thumb. I'm going to open up the style sheet that comes with our project. So that's under www.root and CSS and site.css. And I'll just make my own class down at the bottom. My .thumb. We'll maybe set the width. I'll try 75 pixels. So again, this file is under www.root, CSS, site.css. I'm creating a thumb class. And I'm going to apply that class definition to our product images. There, that's better. You want to make it a little bigger, you can make it a little bigger. Maybe 100 pixels is better, I don't know. Okay. So we can experiment. Yeah, maybe I'll try 100 pixels. A little bigger. So we experiment until we're happy with the customization. So we're getting there. We've got the functionality we want. It really doesn't matter. Scott, up to you. I mean, this CSS file is pretty small. There's only 70 lines in it. So you could add your own CSS, but this is primarily designed for you to change. So it's really up to you. So this is working, but it doesn't look great on the products that have no images. So this is where we want to use this guy, this placeholder. Yep, sure. So we added this. So if our photo is not null, we want to show it. I'm going to add an else condition here. So that if the photo is null, we want it to show that placeholder image instead. So I'm also going to add the placeholder. I need to add that file into this folder. So I'm going to go to my zip file here. I'm going to copy my placeholder inside of the folder with all the images. So just copy it. I'm going to come back to Solution Explorer, and I'm going to paste it in here. So I've just got this placeholder here. And then we can add an else condition. So if our photo is null, we're going to show so this should improve the formatting on our table. Where we have a photo, we're going to display it, but where we have no photo, we'll at least show the placeholder. So there's going to now be a photo, an image beside every product. This looks a little cleaner. Yeah, so we're getting there. Yeah, so we're taking what the scaffold gives us and we're starting to make it look better and make it more functional. So I will push what we've done again. So if you're missing anything, display, prod, fix, or placeholders. So I've pushed, so if you're behind it all, everything's up on GitHub. Okay, yep, that's fine now. That's why I pushed it. So when we edit, we're going to have to implement this same thing. Right? Otherwise, when I go to edit, we can't see the current photo and we can't replace it. Okay. Manjinder, that's good to know. I'll deal with that later. Yeah, we shouldn't be able to sort the photos really, but for now, I won't worry too much about that. Although, absolutely, you're right. That's not ideal. So we're about to, oh, thank you, Attila. Right. Okay, we can do that. On the product index, so on the photo, if we add here, class equals sort table, and no sort. So we'll try that. Attila, that's a great tip. I'm going to try that out. So I've added it to this heading. There. Awesome. Great suggestion. Thank you very much for that. I'm just going to add that to my notes so I can use it in the future. Thank you, Attila. That's awesome. Well, we will add it to edit. We probably will leave it out of details just in the interest of time, but yes, absolutely we need to add it because the process for edit is going to be similar, but we've also got to display the current photo, and yeah, we got to deal with this. So I'll just push again. So I had no sort photo header. Yeah, well, I'm probably going to leave these buttons. If you want to style the buttons differently, you can. You can use Bootstrap to make them buttons. You could make them icons. I'm probably just going to leave them in the interest of time. But if you want to play around and use like button classes for those, by all means, feel free. You certainly can do that. So when we come back, we're going to do two more things with this today. We do need to include the file upload in edit as well. And then we'll want to do some design changes. So color scheme, font, maybe if we have time, even a logo. Okay, and some of you may be interested in that. I know some of you are. Some of you are probably less interested. If you're not interested in seeing that part, that's fine. But I will go over that. Sizing the pics was two parts. I added class of thumb in the image definition. And then I defined a thumb class in www.root css site.css. So in here, I created this thumb class where I set that object, that class to be a width of 100 pixels. So you define the class in the style sheet, and then you can just use that class definition in the HTML view. And you may not like the size, so you're free to experiment as you like. I thought 100 pixels worked okay. Okay, so everything we've done so far today is now on GitHub. We are going to take a 10-minute break here. I'm going to get up and stretch my legs, refill my water, step away from the computer. So we will come back in 10 minutes. We'll do the file upload on edit, and then we'll have a bit of fun kind of cleaning up this design. Scott, it may be cached, maybe a cache issue. Check it out. Okay, we will be back in 10.